Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. It is also a very great honor to be here to share with you some of my ideas about my Master of Science research topic on off-road driving and wildlife trails extraction from high-resolution satellite imagery, a curved transform-based approach. And as we all know that all the species modify their environments, we as human beings are no exception, but an extreme. The demand for recreation and the tourism is keep increasing recently, and it also may affect our ecosystems. And one of the fastest growing activity is off-road driving. And it has been reported that it has a very synergistic and cascading impacts towards the ecosystem, especially when the ecosystem is very vulnerable, like in Iceland. It may take hundreds of years to recover by itself, or never. And also it may affect the habitat in the savanna system. And it has been also reported that this kind of activities is keep expanding, and it is also very sad. But the problem is that we don't have any evidence, and also all the evidence is very difficult to get to have any idea about the spatial extent and the magnitude of this kind of activity happens. And the solution is to mapping it, of course, but traditionally people do ground surveying. As we all know that it's very time-consuming and it involves a lot of human labors. It may also cause new impacts towards the ecosystem when you're going to investigate it. And as an ITC student, you may have very terrible experience when you're clicking your mouse on your ArcGIS to digitize some roads or some polygons in ArcGIS or all those kind of software. So it is not a very wise choice. So thanks to the development of the computer vision and the image understanding combined with remote sensing satellite imagery, it is possible to automatically extract those trails. And since the image covers a very large area, the efficiency of extracting the edge will also be improved. But the problem is that there's no precedent studies, and also the features appears in the image is very narrow and with a very high variability, so it seems to be a barrier. My research was to conquer the barrier. And my study area is in Masai Mara National Reserve, Kenya, and the image I used is GeoEye-1 with a 0.5 meters spatial resolution of the panchromatic band. And technically, when we talk about extracting curvilinear feature from image, we usually talk about something like the first order derivative or the second order derivative based method like Kenny detector. But for some case, it fails to do the task, especially when the trails has very poor contrast towards its background. And thus, the frequency domain was considered from Fourier transformation to wavelet transformation and to the very recently developed curvelet transformation, which handles the curve discontinuities very well. That is because it has very good characteristic of its multi-scale and multi-directional, and it was also considered as the newer generation of wavelet transformation. So 4 parts constitutes of my whole research. For the pre-processing part, the image enhancement was conducted to get a better visual interpretation, to get a better priori knowledge for the image processing part. Since my method is a curvelet-based approach, the directional field and the magnitude was calculated based on that, and the edge was detected based on the magnitude. And for the edge that cannot be detected from the curvelet, directly use the curvelet approach. I use the snake, and finally fit the spline to get the trails. And the fuzzy logic inference system was used to categorize those trails into wildlife trails, off-road trails, or the regular trails. And finally, the evaluation was conducted to get the final result. And the curvelet transformation is basically to transform an image from spatial domain to frequency domain, ended up with getting the curvature coefficients in different scales and the directions. And based on the curvature coefficient, it is possible to get the magnitude, the major direction, and extract the trails by a non-maximum suppression approach. Just an illustration about how directional fields looks like. The red arrow, the length of the red arrow represents the magnitude, and also it pointing at the direction where the major direction is. And from the magnitude, we can get the edge from different scales of curvature coefficients. However, the problem has not been fully solved, because for some edges, like the dark lines, it is really poor contrasted to its background. So it feels, another problem is that categorize it to say what is the animal trails and what is the off-road trails. So two ideas is introduced in the following part. And for the snake is actually an active contour that it keep evolving itself until the energy reach to the minimum. The energy is something can be separated into two parts. The internal energy has something related to its own shape, and while the external energy is basically the image. So, as I said, for the final level of curvature magnitude, it cannot find those trails. But in a coarser level, we can find the trails. And the only problem for using, the only reason for using snake is that the edge that detected from the coarser scale is rigid and inflexible. So we need to refine the shape. That's why I use snake. And for shaping to refine the shape of the extracted segments, I first grow it a little bit and then use a smooth spline to fit those snake points and do it one by one, and finally we get the snake-based result. And this is the result overlaid with the original image. And for the really final part is to separate different trails into different types. And similarity, curvature magnitude, and segment length was considered as the membership function variable, and normalize it first, and establish the membership function and put different weights of them and separate them into different kinds. And for the validation, I considered 5 kind of quality measures, and we calculate those measured from the trail that we create the buffer zone first from both the extracted trails and the reference trails, and overlay with the extract trails and the reference trails respectively, so that we can calculate those measures. This is a separate and independent data set to test the kind of performance. Here's the result. The left side is the reference, and the right side is the extracted results that is based on the above-mentioned approach. And quantitatively, the completeness, the correctness, the quality factor, and the redundancy is like that. And the categorical quality, I borrowed some ideas from the remote sensing land use classification image approach. Like basically, it is the error matrix, but in a different way. It's not pixel by pixel, but I calculated in terms of the length. The unit is in meters. And for the conclusion, and basically the research was done successfully, and the trails has been recognized and extracted, and the implementation was almost done in MATLAB except for the validation that is done in ArcGIS. And I think the commercialization is also promising, but just more time is needed. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. If any questions and suggestions? So there's no...
I have one question about the spline you are using.
Yes.
Once you have the control points for the spline,
Yes.
how do you know which control points correspond to each trial? How do you know how they must link one with each other?
I do it separately. To first get the control points for one segment. And
So do you select the control points manually?
No, just the segments, the line segments, not the points. I separated the edges that I extracted, and I separate into points. I take some samples. I don't pick every pixels on the image, like every several pixels. I pick one point, and then fit a control line. Sorry, fit a spline.
Thank you. Any other questions? So there's no other questions. So thank you for your nice presentation. It seems it was very clear for our auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you.